I know that Jesus was not a farmer. In fact, Mark chapter 6 verse 3 tells us that he was a carpenter, but he talks a lot about farming. In John chapter 12, he begins another discussion on that very same subject. In fact, in John 12 and verse 24, he says, "Most assuredly, I say unto you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain." There's something very interesting in that statement. In fact, it's also alluded to by the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 as well. But we learn something quite interesting, that first of all, a seed, in order for it to do what it's supposed to do, produce much fruit, it has to be planted in the ground. You can have a perfect seed and you can set it on a shelf and it will never accomplish anything. But once you plant it in the ground, then it begins to do what it's supposed to do. And Jesus says that it has to fall into the ground and to die. There's something interesting about that statement, I think, and I believe we're all kind of intrigued by it, but maybe we don't think about it a whole lot. Think about a kernel of corn on an ear of corn. And when you take that ear of corn off the stalk, you have suddenly, essentially, killed the ear of corn, because you've removed it from the stalk where the water and the nutrients are all providing life for it. And really, when you take it off that stalk, essentially, it begins to die. And you take that one little kernel of corn that you will use to plant in the ground to make another corn stalk and more ears of corn down the road. You take that one little kernel of corn, essentially, that kernel of corn is dead. It's been removed from its life source. But you plant it in the ground and it comes to life and produces a whole nother stalk. Jesus goes on to say in this same text, "He who loves his life will lose it, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life." You see, Jesus is saying the real answer, the real solution to life is not living, it's death. In order to be a true New Testament Christian, in order to live that life, we must first die. And when we die, only then do we find life. Life in serving Jesus, life that is demonstrated by Jesus' death and resurrection to life. That's where life really is. And as the old saying goes, are you living and dying, or will you find yourself when you die really living?